I'm going to be talking about the cutscenes of Sonic Riders in chronological order. Storm and Wave come into Jet's office, see the family heirloom on his desk for apparently the first time, so I guess Jet's father only recently died. Wave wants to use the heirloom in one of her experiments, and Storm keeps it away from her, saying to remember the teaching of their ancestors. So their ancestry at the end is foreshadowed? And it's cleverly passed off as Storm being an idiot, so you don't get suspicious. But you still look back on it and recognize it as foreshadowing. That's pretty well done. Eggman walks up to Jet and tells him that he wants the Babylon Rogues to collect Chaos Emeralds. I guess he used spy drones to figure out where they are and how to get here. Eggman tells him what the key to the Babylon Garden is. But the game has him inexplicably whispered to Jet just for the sake of hiding the reveal from the audience. He tells him that Sonic is the fastest creature in the world, and Jet insists that in the air he's not nearly as fast as him. Even if it's dumb since it's the airboard that's fast. After that, Sonic chases after the Babylon Rogues on a road. He picks up an airboard having shown no signs that he could use it beforehand, and instantly ends up being much better at it than the Babylon Rogues, who have used airboards their entire lives. As a perfect punishment for this, Jet knocks Sonic out of the sky and onto the ground, taunting him, and he leaves with Sonic being annoyed and wanting to race him. This establishes him as a credible threat and legitimate rival to Sonic, because he loses in the first fight with him, unlike Surge. To be fair, we just assumed Sonic never used an airboard before because we never saw him use an airboard before. Sonic's more about being inspirational than a relatable person. But it's not really inspirational to just be natural talents because you're just that lucky. Eggman displays a message on a large television that a lot of people in the city can look up at, and explains that despite being a wanted fugitive that Gun's searching for, he's still somehow managed to set up a Grand Prix to find out who's the best of the best with extreme gear. Like, shouldn't cops go to the Grand Prix? I guess they're too afraid of Eggman. I mean, he does have robots protecting him. I'd like to point out that Eggman looks terrible in this game. And here's an infamous line.
Not just a race, but a special race to see who's the fastest.
That had to be an intentional joke, because even I couldn't help but laugh at hearing it. He means the fastest at extreme gear in the world, but you can't help but wonder if he looked back on what he said later and thought, that sounds much better in my head. Even though the line is badly written, I still love it because it's so hilarious. By saying these races are no holds barred, that implies that Jet's allowed to cheat. He says that you have to pay a Chaos Emerald to enter the race, and the Babylon Rogues will be the current contestants, along with his racer robots that function as the only other possible contestants. Really, Sonic? Eggman's asking for Chaos Emeralds and Sonic's so fixated on proving he can surpass Jet that he's gonna give him Chaos Emeralds? Granted, he's got every right to be confident that it'll stop Eggman from doing anything evil with him. But still! There's being reckless and there's being irresponsible. Sonic and his friends are at a waterfall, and Knuckles wonders what Eggman is really after. Obviously he's after all the Chaos Emeralds. Why are they overthinking this? Also, I should have mentioned it before, but the voice acting is pretty terrible. So Amy arrives and tells Sonic that she joined the racing tournament because it sounded exciting and fun, and she wanted an excuse to keep her eyes on Sonic. There's been much worse reasons for the Sonic characters joining a competition that involved emeralds. Tails stares at an airboard that he customized himself, and says the mark of the Babylon Rogues is on the board. Even though he customized it himself, and yet he's looking at the mark like he's never seen it before. He says that the Babylon Rogues lived on a floating island a long time ago, and caused their island to be, why do we care about this exposition right now? Still, I like that's a reverse of the echidnas. It's a shame we never saw even one flashback showing the ancient Babylon Rogue civilization. Is there any point to Tails telling his friends this? Wouldn't everyone already know about this, so why is he telling them this? He's an engineer who makes futuristic inventions, why would he care about old stuff? If he knows about this because everyone was told about this, then why don't his friends already know about this? Then Tails gives Knuckles a technobabble explanation for why the extreme gears can float, causing him to have a supposedly humorous cartoon reaction. But Sonic and Amy couldn't have understood the explanation either. So why didn't they react that way? The answer? Because Knuckles is being exaggerated into an idiot. They want to make Knuckles the butt of the joke and not everybody else because he's the chew toy. I always hate him being used as comedy relief. Wave shows up, and this is her most infamous scene right here. You find out in the Babylon Rogue story that she thought to herself that it was a very impressive airboard, but she still laughs at him. Why doesn't Tails ever notice that clearly visible bomb? The fact that she mocks and laughs at him alone doesn't make me hate her. It's Tails being sad and insecure about it in a later cutscene that does. It would be even sadder if it was explicitly pointed out that he's upset because she's reminding him of his bullies from before he met Sonic. We just looked at the outside of the board. How would that tell her anything about how well designed it is? And none of Tails' friends stand up for him while Wave is there. That's out of character. You'd think Knuckles would lose his temper with her and try to fight her considering what a hothead he's usually portrayed as. You'd think Sonic would stand up for his little brother figure. It makes Tails look like the chew toy. Friends like that aren't good friends. Knuckles even insults Tails.
And tinkering's all he's really good at, too.
Like, he's been through Sonic Heroes before, so why does he think he's only good at tinkering? Not only did he see him fly, he saw him fight Badniks too. And even if this was an alternate universe at the time, you'd think it would have seen him fight robots before. You'd think Sonic would insult him for this. So at the end of the cutscene, all the racers are called to the racing tournament. Knuckles and Storm have a physical confrontation, and they end up accidentally attacking one of Eggman's robots. But for some reason, they're unhappy at hurting the robot, and even Storm apologizes to him. That's really bizarre considering that Eggman's robots have such a bad reputation in the world, and Knuckles is used to destroying robots. If you thought of them this way, how could they handle Sonic Heroes? Why would they be afraid of consequences from Eggman for this? This is like freaking out because you killed a Badnik. Why would Jet care if someone other than him on his team lost? All of his motivations is determined by proving that he is superior. I guess Storm's just an idiot. Wave calls Storm worthless and says that his skills just suck. She's pretty shockingly mean. Storm says that Knuckles must have cheated, and Wave takes that childishness as them insulting the airboard she made. Huh? I hate when people just jump to conclusions for no reason. I feel sorry for Storm here, despite finding him an obnoxious character. Then the sheer force of Storm closing the door and leaving causes the picture of Jet's father to land on him. I love that. And how he throws a tantrum about it happening. So the slapstick has consequences. We need a lot more slapstick in the cutscenes, not just characters standing around. Jet is lying lazily in a forest while Wave is pacing back and forth nervously and complaining about Storm taking so long. Which is a good way of establishing how the two of them usually interact with each other and contrast each other. Jet somehow manages to fast forward or nag him about being irresponsible. In retrospect, this didn't literally happen, it's just him imagining it. Because you think he would do this again. This is the kind of humor that I'm glad the series never does. Jet spots Sonic doing tricks in the air in his training. Wait, why is Sonic training? He actually has the humility to think that he needs training. That's a nice change of pace. And he decides to confront Sonic for fun, while the spell on Wave wears off and she complains. In a way that I find relatable. Tails goes from being happy to scared in an instant. Jet decides to taunt Sonic from the top of a tree branch. Why did Sonic say that about his rival that he's fixated on beating? I think it's just weird because you expect him to be an egomaniac. And then you remind yourself that most of the time Sonic's nice in the games. In fact, whenever I think of Sonic, the first thing I think of is nice guy. He's never respectful when he's talking about Knuckles. Tails sadly remembers Wave insulting his airboard and decides to improve it. On the one hand, I wish he had more scenes like this. Then I'd care about him. The insecure genius is so much more interesting and sympathetic of a character than the insufferable genius. It's very unique. Most of the time he's just non-stop Mr. Exposition machine, and it's really boring. The problem is, this is why Wave made a huge mistake by insulting his airboard. Not only should it have been obvious, sir, that it wasn't going to make him stop using airboards, so there was no point even bothering, but insulting him is only going to increase the likelihood of him noticing the bomb. She motivated him to improve the airboard. Apparently, she put it on just the right side of it. So Tails says that Wave might be right because she's a really brilliant mecha mechanic. Mecha mechanic? I don't even remember her building any robots, let alone mechas. I associate the word mecha with the stuff Eggman fights Sonic in. I guess this is awkward translation. Sonic actually comforts Tails. Something he really should do in more games instead of barely interacting with him. Coming off like they're just cops who do nothing but fight Eggman together and barely see each other aside from that. But his line delivery is so stilted that it ruins it. Tails' actor also reads his next line awkwardly, in a tone that doesn't at all match the determination he's trying to show. But to be fair, the kind of line that he got is impossible to speak in a natural way. Jet finds out what the real treasure of the Rogues is. So what's the point of them finding this out early? I mean, they would have found it later on anyways. I didn't know Eggman had a diary. It just confuses me that he'd have a journal when someone would be so likely to want to read it to get information on him. You'd think after he saw someone else's diary being read to somebody, it'd be a giant red flag to not do that himself. Jet was about to give up because he wasn't interested in world domination or advanced technology. But he was smart enough to listen to Wave when she said that the technology must have value because Eggman wants it. Her pager beeps in a futuristic setting. Amy's back in her red dress and says she'll be cheering Sonic on. I hate how all the emeralds look like they're made of the cheapest glass imaginable. They barely even look like themselves. They're so thin and transparent. Jet and Sonic get into a race with each other. Wave blows up Sonic's airboard. So even though Tails supposedly examined Sonic's board to make sure it was working at 100%, he still didn't notice the bomb and Sonic lost the race anyways. They shouldn't have had him say that then. And Sonic looks absolutely pissed at the result, which I like. It's such a nice change of pace. It makes me tempted to call him the best rival he's ever had. Jet holds up the heirloom of his father and all of the Chaos Emeralds start glowing in response to it. And the Babylon Garden Island rises up from the ground again and returns to the sky. Jet shows depths because he's amazed at seeing this. Then Eggman steals the heirloom with a crane and runs off. Amy jumps onto the machine Eggman uses to get away in an attempt to stop him and gets herself kidnapped instead. Everyone goes after Eggman, with Tails giving Sonic a new airboard that he made just in case Sonic's board was blown up. Huh? I guess what he was expecting was that it'd malfunction. So then why didn't he tell Sonic to use his board for the race? Well, it did show off how smart Wave was that she thought to cheat. It robbed us of the chance to have a rival of Sonic's win legitimately, which would have made a lot more sense because he's had a lot more experience than he has. I mean, the point is, it wasn't really necessary to have this happen because they're criminals. They would have tried to take the emeralds and do what they wanted regardless of whether they won. Jet and Sonic decide to race again, with Sonic saying with terrible acting,
"I'll show you what true speed really is,"
and not immediately jumping off his board and running. Everyone arrives from the island. Storm and Knuckles almost have a fight, with Wave telling Storm that it's not the time for a fight and forget the Red Mutt. Why can't Sonic just attack the robots himself instead of running from them? So Sonic wins the race, and says an extremely memorable, ridiculous line. Eggman threatens Sonic using Amy as a human shield and telling him to stay still. Sonic actually takes a pragmatic approach and creates a tornado around him to blow him and Amy away. He lets Jet catch the heirloom. And Jet says he doesn't need its pity, with stilted lines again. And Wave's pragmatic again, getting my respect. Amy actually calls Sonic out on this, and runs after him with a hammer furiously, which is one of the most infamous parts of her character. She would have really been justified if she had been injured. Instead, it looks like she's overreacting because she doesn't even have a bruise on her. She says she won't forgive him this time, but she will. It's just annoying to see someone who's all talk. You'd expect his band girl to be fine with this, because it's a decision he made. So the rogues use the heirloom to open the door to find some treasure. And everyone hears this really lame sounding sound clip that will repeat over and over, which comes from a giant robot guardian. I love Sonic's response to this, and Sonic and his friends decide to help the Babylon rogues fight it. How did Eggman even get into the room in the first place? We didn't see the doors get blown up. It's not like he said he made himself intangible and able to float. I have to assume that he opened the doors. The robot vanishes into thin air and magically leaves a treasure chest behind. Eggman finds a carpet, and at first he's happy because it's ancient and a well-made carpet, so it'll sell for a lot of money. But then, he starts complaining because it's just a carpet. Where did that come from? Then he inexplicably faints. It's not like Eggman to faint, especially not this easily. Jen and his friends take the carpet, revealing that's actually a flying carpet. Eggman read what was on the carpet, so why the hell didn't he figure out that it was a flying carpet? How did Tails figure out that the flying carpet was made the exact same material as the clearly metallic Extreme Gear? I can get that there's only cloth on the outside, but how can Tails spot that it's no ordinary cloth from just a glance? And apparently Wave spotted it too, somehow. So this world has bird genies apparently. It's a strange and unique universe, this Sonic universe, so I don't really mind. But considering how completely pointless this revelation is, it makes sense that it was completely forgotten about later. It's not like they can unlock their hidden genie powers and become overpowered. And if they did, I just wonder why they didn't kill Eggman. I still can't imagine bird people being genies though, because it's not like genies look like that in Sonic and the Secret Rings. Jet challenges Sonic to another race, and Storm complains, bickering with her inexplicably. The rogues never seem to get along, just bicker for no reason. It makes me wonder why they're working together other than complete obligation. If you're gonna have your characters bicker, have them argue about things that are reasonable most of the time, like calling each other out on their flaws and legitimately bad decisions. Everyone flies away. This is one of the last few Sonic plots I consider a good plot. It actually makes me feel something. Making me feel sorry for Tails when he gets bullied by Wave. The cutscenes have a good sense of humor and lots of interesting things happening in them to keep you engaged. And the cutscene presentation is excellent. I think I'd prefer the plot of Zero Gravity though. All I'm thinking at the end of it is, that was it? I mean, that's pretty underwhelming. It was literally just a race. It is a racing game, but if you're gonna introduce a bunch of new characters, they deserve a more interesting plot than just they race each other for a racing tournament. I wish the rogues were able to fly without airboards. I know it'd be redundant, but it would have come in handy if they ever lost their airboards, or they ran out of fuel. What's the point of making them birds? Just have them grow wings out of their arms like Medley.